At my wedding, an unexpected situation unfolded that I could hardly believe. My in-laws, having indulged a bit too much, became the center of hushed whispers among the guests. In a surprising outburst, they confronted me, loudly proclaiming that now that I was married, I needed to prove my worth to their family, specifically by contributing an additional $5,000 a month. Their demands echoed the sentiments my father-in-law had expressed earlier. The room fell silent, and I was left stunned, my face draining of color at their audacity. Thankfully, my father intervened, taking the microphone and firmly addressing them. He highlighted the embarrassment they were causing, and his decisive words provided some relief in an otherwise tense moment. My name is Betty Rachel, and I'm 33 years old, currently engaged to Stephen, who is 35. We met through a mutual friend who was concerned about my prolonged single status. Losing my mother at a young age deeply affected me, and my father took on the role of both parents, working tirelessly to provide for me. This loss led me to guard my emotions closely, making serious dating a rarity. At first, I had reservations about Stephen, but his persistent care and respect gradually won me over. He was always a gentleman, and over time, his unwavering support and kindness allowed me to open my heart again. Dating him brought joy back into my life, making him incredibly special to me. As my relationship with Stephen deepened, I found myself envisioning a future together. When he proposed, it felt like the natural next step for us. Stephen was always incredibly understanding, constantly reassuring me with his supportive words. "Don't worry. If you ever feel unsure about something, I'll be here for you until you feel better. I love you, Betty. You can count on me." His promises to make me happy warmed my heart profoundly, and I knew I wanted to offer him the same depth of care and commitment. When I shared the news of our engagement with my father, his reaction was one of overwhelming joy. He even shed tears, exclaiming, "Wow, Betty, you're finally getting married. I'm so happy for you." I playfully called him dramatic, which led to a touching conversation where he revealed his quiet fears about me never settling down. That moment showcased just how deeply he cared for me, and I felt grateful for everything he had done as a stable parent. I anticipated that the wedding would be an emotional day for both of us, probably with even more tears from him, given how sentimental he had been. With our engagement in place, Stephen and I dove into the hectic world of wedding planning. Balancing our demanding jobs with preparations meant our weekends were packed and our schedules were bursting at the seams. Despite the chaos, we managed to keep our spirits high, looking forward to special moments ahead. One such moment was meeting Stephen's parents for the first time. Though Stephen had met my father shortly after our engagement, scheduling conflicts had delayed my introduction to his parents. Finally, the day arrived, and as we approached their house, I felt a mix of excitement and nerves. I felt a wave of nervousness wash over me, but Stephen was quick to offer comfort. "Don't worry, my parents are very kind," he assured me, helping to ease my anxiety as we stepped into what would be a significant new chapter in our lives together. When I rang the doorbell at Stephen's family home, his mother was the one to greet us. "Mom, I'm home," Stephen announced cheerfully. "Welcome home, Stephen. It's so good of you to come," she replied with a warm smile. As she engaged in light conversation with her son, I took the opportunity to introduce myself. "Nice to meet you. My name is Betty, and I'm Stephen's fiancée." But her demeanor shifted subtly as she turned to me. Her voice dropped a notch from the cheerful tone she had used with Stephen, and her smile faded. "So, you're Betty," she remarked, giving me a thorough once-over that felt more like an appraisal than a greeting. She then led us into the living room, where her cool attitude lingered. "Betty, I'm curious about what you bring to the table. Stephen is our treasure and our only child. If you're going to marry him, you need to be a suitable wife. Are you worthy of him?" Her tone was sharp, making the question feel more like an interrogation. I was taken aback by the unexpected harshness from my future mother-in-law and struggled to find my words. "You're going to join our family, you know. Are you ready for that?" she continued, her words carrying a weight of expectation that felt disproportionate. After all, I wasn't marrying into a royal or famously distinguished family, so why such a heavy commitment? As I pondered how to respond to her probing questions, I sensed her growing impatience with my silence. "When I ask you a question, I expect an answer right away. You're being rude?" Her voice rose with intensity, pushing for an immediate response despite my overwhelming feelings. I managed to respond, "I hope that Stephen and I will support each other throughout our marriage." But my answer didn't satisfy her. "What a naive thing to say," she retorted sharply. "You're not just supposed to support each other. It's your job as a wife to support Stephen. You don't even understand the basics." Her criticism stung. At that moment, Stephen's father, who had been quietly observing the exchange, stepped in. "Honey, calm down," he said gently. Turning to me, he added, "I'm sorry about that, Betty. You must have been startled by my wife's words." His calm demeanor attempted to diffuse the tension, and I reminded myself that Stephen's mother was fiercely protective of her only son. Perhaps her sharp words were just nerves speaking out of turn. Just then, Stephen's brother entered the room, his quiet, gentle presence momentarily easing the tension. However, the relief was short-lived as he flashed a disarming smile and voiced his support for their mother's harsh words. "What my wife says is justified. What concerns me the most is that you come from a single-parent family," he remarked. Confused, I asked, "What do you mean by that?" "Being raised by just one parent doesn't have a good public image," he explained. "We can't be too happy to have someone like that become the wife of our only son, can we?" I couldn't let his comment go unchallenged. "Hold on a minute. What's wrong with being raised by a single parent? My father worked incredibly hard to raise me by himself, and I'm thankful for my upbringing. I'm proud of my father. Being raised by a single parent doesn't make me any less valuable." Despite my protests, they continued to argue. "Since you were missing one parent, you couldn't have learned how to be a good wife, to do housework and such," they claimed. I responded firmly, determined not to back down. "I did a lot of housework to help my father, and I can cook pretty well, so please don't say that," I responded, trying to defend myself. But Stephen's mother brushed aside my words and declared, "I will allow you to marry Stephen, but in exchange, you must promise to devote everything to us as his parents. Can you promise me that?" I was taken aback by her demands. "Wait, since you came here to ask for our permission to marry your son, you do know what your duties are, don't you?" Before I could elaborate, she continued, making it clear that my in-laws were dominating the discussion, leaving me little room to express my thoughts. That night, as I reflected on our visit, I realized how deeply this conversation had impacted me. It had been overwhelming, prompting me to consider the dynamics I was about to enter with Stephen's family. Feeling the weight of that encounter, I decided it was crucial to discuss my feelings with him. "Stephen, do your parents always talk to people like that?" I asked, hoping for some insight or support. He seemed unaffected by my question. "What about it?" he replied, clearly not seeing the issue. I pressed on, trying to clarify my concerns. "Well, I mean the way your parents spoke to me and what they said," I explained. "Oh, really? They were just talking about whether you were ready for this marriage," he responded nonchalantly. I understood that his parents were concerned about their son's future, but their approach felt excessive. "I get that your parents are worried, but it felt like too much," I pointed out. "Really? Why is that?" "My parents didn't say anything wrong. Besides, they permitted us to get married, so don't worry about it," he reassured me. His response troubled me. It seemed he was more aligned with his parents' views than with understanding my feelings. Sensing my unease, Stephen hugged me. "Betty, you don't have to worry so much. My parents are just a bit upset because their only son is getting married," he explained, though his words felt like he didn't fully grasp my concerns. "It's all going to be fine. Don't overthink it. I'm sure they just want what's best for us. They want us to be as good a couple as they are, which is why they were a bit harsh," he added. "Oh," I replied, somewhat skeptically. Stephen seemed to think his parents' high expectations were normal, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't right for them to diminish me simply because I was raised by a single parent, and I couldn't understand how anyone could hold such views while claiming to be supportive partners. This wedding was about Stephen and me. We should be the focus, not his parents' approval or disapproval. Despite my frustration, I decided not to dwell on my opinions. Then, the wedding day arrived. The venue buzzed with our relatives, friends, colleagues, and bosses. As I walked in the aisle with my father, who had lovingly raised me, a whirlwind of emotions washed over me. Stephen and I exchanged our vows and rings, and the room erupted in applause. Despite the challenges we faced, this was our moment, and I was determined to cherish it. As I walked down the aisle with Stephen, the reality of marrying him sank in, filling me with an unprecedented joy. The reception hall was alive as we entered, greeted by videos of our journey together playing in the background, adding a personal touch to the celebrations. I reveled in reconnecting with friends I hadn't seen in a while, receiving heartfelt congratulations from many. Despite my initial reservations about Stephen's parents, I felt relieved and genuinely happy to have chosen to marry him. We planned to officially register our marriage after the ceremony. a step that would unite us as husband and wife. I savored every moment, basking in the happiness of the day. However, as the event progressed and it came time to greet our guests, a sense of unease returned. Stephen's parents, standing in line with us, were noticeably unsteady on their feet, their faces flushed a deep red, a clear sign they had indulged too much in the celebration. Some relatives quietly inquired if they were all right, and it was embarrassing, but we had to proceed with the ceremony's conclusion. Then, the moment the microphone was handed to us, Stephen's mother unexpectedly grabbed my hand, pulling me away from him, shouting with an intensity that felt almost theatrical. "Listen to me, Betty. After this wedding, you're going to devote yourself to us completely. Prepare yourself because we are going to test you hard." Murmurs rippled through the guests, some chuckling, unsure whether to take her seriously. But things took a turn for the worse when Stephen's father snatched the microphone, bluntly criticizing my appearance. "Betty, don't you feel embarrassed wearing a dress like that? It doesn't suit you at all, dear." His mother quickly chimed in, nodding in agreement. The whispers among the guests grew louder, shifting to a more concerned tone. I turned to Stephen, my eyes wide with shock, pleading for his support, hoping he would intervene and stop his father's rude comments. The situation demanded that he stand up not just for me but for the respect and dignity of our union. A tense moment unfolded, illuminating the dynamics of my new family. Stephen's parents, clearly intoxicated, began making demands of me, stating that if I were to truly be part of their family, I felt the pressure to prove my financial contributions. "After you register your marriage, you should give us a few thousand a month from your entire bonus," they insisted. Their demands left me stunned, my face paling as they continued to berate me. Seeing my distress, my father intervened. He took the microphone from them and said firmly but respectfully, "Enough of this. Don't you realize you're making fools of yourselves?" Despite his calm demeanor, Stephen's parents reacted harshly, questioning his interruption and degrading him as a single parent, asserting that single parents were never any good. Their audacity stung deeply, but my father remained composed. "You people are worse than I imagined. You refuse to meet me because I'm a single father," he responded. Then, a surprising turn of events, he revealed a connection that took everyone by surprise. "I never thought someone like you would work for President Roy. President Roy is a respectable person, and I assumed his employees would be decent as well." The mention of President Roy, a business partner of my father's and an old friend, visibly shook my father-in-law. My father continued, "And speaking of single parents, President Roy was raised by his mother alone, so you just insulted the president of the company you work for." I watched as the realization of their mistake washed over my in-laws, the dynamics in the room shifting dramatically. My father-in-law, once bold and commanding, now appeared diminished and anxious. "I apologize, sir. Please don't tell the president about this," he pleaded, his tone desperate as he suddenly fell to his knees, a stark contrast to his earlier bravado. This moment was pivotal for me, revealing both the true colors of Stephen's family and the strength and connections of my own. It became clear that Stephen, who had remained silent, might never protect me from his parents' overreach. This realization was painful but necessary as I contemplated our future together. Amidst the buzzing hall filled with our guests, the tension peaked. I sensed Stephen's defeated demeanor while guests caught between shock and amusement began recording the unfolding scene. My father, standing resolute and unyielding, approached me. "No matter how much you apologize, you can't take back your words," he said firmly. He then asked if I wanted to leave with him, and without hesitation, I nodded. I agreed, taking the microphone from Stephen. With clarity and finality, I addressed everyone in the room. "Thank you for the entertainment, but there will be no marriage," I announced, directing my words at Stephen, his parents, and all the guests. "I'll ensure that all gifts and contributions for this occasion are returned." With that, I left the reception hall alongside my father. As we exited, I caught a glimpse of Stephen and his parents, their faces a mix of shock and dismay. Behind them, their relatives gathered, concern etched on their faces as chaos began to unfold in the room. In the days that followed, as I returned money and gifts, many guests expressed their sympathy and admiration for my decision. They commended my father and me for our integrity and courage in facing such a difficult situation. The aftermath of the reception rippled through Stephen's social and professional life. His co-workers who had witnessed the ordeal spread the word, tarnishing his reputation and highlighting his inability to stand up to his unreasonable parents. This painted him as someone lacking character. Embarrassed and unable to face his colleagues, Stephen ultimately resigned from his job. The fallout extended to his father as well. The president of the company, having learned about the incident through the grapevine, took decisive action. Stephen's father was demoted and reassigned to a remote division, a clear statement about the company's commitment to integrity and respect. Meanwhile, Stephen's family found themselves increasingly isolated within their community and extended family, a direct consequence of their actions at the wedding. While this was unfortunate, it served as a stark reminder that actions have consequences, often unavoidable ones. Life went on for me, with lessons learned and new beginnings on the horizon. Following the dramatic end to my planned wedding, I took the time to strengthen my bond with my dad. We spent more quality time together, deepening my appreciation for everything he had done for me. One day, he initiated a serious conversation that took me by surprise. "Betty, are you interested in running the business?" he asked, his eyes filled with hope and seriousness. "Do you mean?" I hesitated, unsure of where he was leading. "Why don't you work towards becoming the president of my company?" he suggested. The idea was a significant leap, yet he seemed confident that I was ready for it. "I'll do my best, I promise." A swirl of excitement and nervousness taking over me, I decided to focus on advancing my career and set aside any romantic entanglements for the time being. I was determined to prove to myself and my dad that I could excel and perhaps one day become a great leader like him. Currently, I am deeply engaged in learning every aspect of my dad's company. The work is challenging but immensely rewarding, and I am committed to seizing this opportunity. Reflecting on the wedding debacle, it's evident that Stephen's in-laws were unreasonable, turning what should have been a joyous celebration into a complete spectacle. Thankfully, since the marriage was never officially registered, I avoided a legally binding mistake. Now free from any marital commitments and the potential complications of in-law relationships, I can focus solely on my career ambitions. It's liberating to realize that from such chaos has emerged a clear direction for my future. I look forward to the possibilities that leading the company might bring. I wish myself all the best and hope that anyone who hears this story finds something valuable in it. Thank you for staying until the end, and if you enjoyed this journey, please consider subscribing. I look forward to sharing more updates and insights in my next video.